you can share the link in the chat room so that those for the AI and machine learning could migrate to their classes. All right. Please, you can do that right away. Your class is opened at the moment. Please, you can migrate to your classes. Let me share the link. Okay. All right, the link is already on the group, so please, you can switch to your different classes now. Thank you for your time. The recording of this session is going to be sent to the respective Telegram group. All right, so if you are here for the business analysis class, please stay. We are about to go into the next session right about now. Damola, please make our next trainer co-host. I'm going to be reading your profile right about now, and then the attendance link is going to be shared right about now. Please, if you are still here for the AI and machine learning class, please, you can exit this call and go to your class. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Permit me to share my screen for just a sec. Thank you. All right. So the next trainer who will be taking us on this very session is none other than Inioluwa Aborowa. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Inioluwa is a dedicated, results-driven management system expert with years of experience and a profound commitment to enhancing organizational efficiency and fostering sustainable growth. He has a dynamic background in environmental advocacy and information security. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause in the chat room, can we welcome our next trainer who will be taking us on this second session on the topic ISO 14001, talking about environmental management system. A round of applause as we welcome him. Thank you. Inioluwa, please, if you are here, you can take it up from here.
All right. Good morning, Mercy. Thanks you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Loud and clear. You are loud and clear.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. So give me a minute to just share my screen before we can start this section. All right. Good morning once again, everybody. I hope, I believe I actually enjoyed the previous section, and I believe we all do. All right, moving on to what we have next, which is environmental management system, ISO 14001, the 2015 version. But before we proceed, I would like to just pick our own understanding to hear our thoughts on something. We are looking at environmental management system. But then let's ask ourselves, in the world we have today, in the world so advanced as the present world we have today, whereby our technology is the core of everything we do. Now, we talk about cybersecurity, to Internet of Things, to cloud computing, and then we are talking about AI advancement. The question is, why do we need environmental management system? Why do we need to talk about the environment? And why is it necessary, or why is it essential that we have the understanding of what is happening in our environment? Please, I would like us to, in the chat box, I'm already in the chat box, or you can just unmute your mic and give me your thoughts about the reason why you think you needed to be here, and you need to know about ISO 14001. Anybody? Your thoughts? Okay.
I believe they are still typing in their answers.
All right. So you can just unmute because the time is not by our side. All right. Is there anybody to give their thoughts about why you think ISO 14001 is necessary, or why we need to talk about the environment despite the advancement in technology, despite our dependency on technology in the era we have? You can just unmute anybody. Okay, it's fine. If nobody is speaking, so environment is actually essential and it's necessary for us to be aware of what is happening in our environment, because whatever it is we do, we rely on the physical environment to ensure that we as human beings, we are able to survive in the world we have. We are talking about technology. Even the most advanced technology that we say we use today depends on the environment. They require energy. They require resources, which in one way or the other impact the environment in one way or another. You want to talk about data centers. They consume huge amount of electricity and water. And also you want to talk about manufacturing or talk about our gadgets. They produce what we call toxic waste. We call it e-waste actually. And also talking about the expectation when it comes to global regulations, it is expected that each and every organization is actually in compliance with the environmental aspect of things. As an organization, you have to be aware of what it is that your impact is in the environment. And as we go on, we'll be talking about environmental aspect and also talking about the legal aspect of things when it comes to the environment. So as it is,
Hello,
the environment. Hello?
Yes, please, you can. You have some responses in the chat room.
Okay, thank you. Checking that. Okay, perfect. Somebody said environment is vital to business. All right. We still interact. Exactly. Thank you, Princess. Thank you. Oluwashino. Thank you, Adebayo. Environmental sustainability. Exactly. So we are seeing exactly that no matter how advanced we are in whatever era that we might find ourselves, the environment is actually important to us. And that is why we are here, and that is why we need to talk about environmental management system. In the course of the study, we are going to be learning and understand what the ISO standard when it comes to ISO 14001, the 2015 version, what it speaks to, and what it contains. And also, we'll be able to understand how to go about the implementation of this particular standard. Also, we gain familiarity with structures and terminology. You've heard me talk about the environmental aspects. You will gain insight into those terminology. Now, what is ISO in itself? ISO simply means International Organization for Standardization. It's an independent, non-governmental body, and they were established in 1947 with their headquarters at Geneva, Switzerland. So what are the key points of what ISO does? They look into the era we are, they look at the organization, they look at things in the world, and then decide if there is a need for certain regulation of certain framework to be developed. They started with ISO 9001, which we all refer to as the mother of all standard. And over time, they've been able to publish over 24,000 standards when it comes to different area or different sector in the world. And also, we'll be looking at the key characteristics of the ISO 1400 families. What is the key characteristics? One, it is globally applicable. It is irrelevant where you are located in the world. The ISO standard is still applicable to you. Comprehensive scope. They encompass every facet of environmental management system throughout their coverage. And also, there's an aspect of it that they also focus on, which is continuous improvement. Whatever process we have in place, in order to ensure that as an organization, we are concerned about the environment and we are doing our part about the environment, there is always a better way of achieving those things. And we have various framework under this family. We call it the ISO 14000 family as a whole. But under it, we have other ones like the ISO 14001, which is the one we are looking at this morning that speaks to environmental management system. And also we have the ISO 14004, which speaks to the guidelines when it comes to the environmental management system. And also we have the ISO 14015 that speaks to environmental assessments of sites and their organization. So also we have the ISO 14064, and there we have ISO 19011, which speaks to auditing of the management system. So let's go into the environmental management system proper. What does it mean? ISO 14001 is actually a global management system which is adopted by thousands of companies all over the world. Remember, when we talk about the characteristics the other time, we said it is globally applicable. And also, it provides a framework for holistic strategic approach to organizations' environmental policies, plan, and action. As an organization, you are looking for a way to be in compliance with the requirement of regulatory bodies when it comes to your responsibility, obligation to the environment. This is a need to have. This is something that can assist you to give you proper framework on how to go about achieving that. And when we talk about the benefits of the standard in itself to your organization, we'll talk about increased efficiency in the use of energy and the resources. And also, it results in what we call reduction of waste output. Because whatever it is that we as an organization, we are releasing to the environment, one way or the other, it interacts with the environment, and it should be our own part of our responsibility to ensure that those things are being put in check. You want to talk about emission, you want to talk about effluent discharge from the organization, you have to ensure that you reduce it to the required minimum. And over the years, the ISO standard has evolved from the first time it was issued to the present version we are in, which is the 2015 version, right from the first version, the second version, the third version, which is the 2015 version. Now let's look at the ISO standard in itself. What does it contain? The ISO 14001. What does it contain? It has 10 clauses, but the auditable and the implementable clause is always, for those of us that are well acquainted with ISO standard, is always the clause 4 to 10. And we are going to be looking at it step by step, clauses by clauses, to understand, to have an insight into what each of these clauses, what they say, and what is their requirement, and how do we as a person, as an organization, how do we ensure that these requirements are being met? The first clause, which is clause 4, speaking to the context of the organization. Under it, we have 4 sub-clauses, which is understanding the context of the organization. We need to understand our organization and its context. What do we do? Who do we do it with? 4.2 is talking about understanding the needs and expectations of our interested parties. Who are those people that have interest, one way or the other, in our organization? Whatever it is that we do, our products, our services, who are those people that it impacts one way or the other? The 4.3 speaks to determining the scope of the management system. We have to put into consideration talking about the context of our own organization in itself, our interested parties and their requirements, to be able to determine what scope, what extent, to what extent are we going to implement the environmental management system. And the last sub-clause under that, which is environmental management system in itself, that says we need to establish, implement, and ensure that we continuously improve the system we have in place. Clause 5 speaks to leadership, and under it we have 3 sub-clauses, which is the first one speaking to leadership commitment, environmental policy, and the 5.3 is speaking to organizational roles and responsibility. Also, moving from there, we'll talk about the clauses that speaks to planning. Now, under that, we have different subclauses also. The first one, 6.1, that speaks to actions to address risk and opportunity from what we've considered when it comes to our context as an organization, from the requirements of our interested parties. What are those risks that might arise from those things? And what are the opportunities that we as an organization have been able to identify that we can exploit? And I do say it most time when each time I get to speak about risk. Risk is not only about negativity. We have the positive risk that we term or call as opportunity. So the way we treat our negative risk, we also need to ensure that we treat those positive risks that we call opportunities. Under it, we have other sub-headings, other sub-clauses also. Under it, we'll be looking at the environmental aspects, we'll be looking at compliance obligations, looking at planning and the rest, and also 6.2 that speaks to how objective. Now, as an organization, why do you just decide you want to implement or you want to be conscious about the environment? There should be a set objective. There should be a reason why. There should be something you are looking out for. So you need to set your objective in alignment with your organization strategy, and also ensure that it's in alignment with your organization's objective. And under that, we'll be talking about ensuring that your objective is smart, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and there should be time-bound. We'll be looking at the clause 7 that speaks to support, saying that we want to implement. We need resources. We need competent people. People need to be aware of our commitment and things we've planned to do. And also, we ensure that we communicate this intent and our objectives towards the environment to both our internal and external parties. And also, we'll be looking at documented information. Today, you agree with me that every organization needs to document. It's not enough you are doing something. You must be able to prove that you're actually doing that thing. And how do you prove that? It's through documentation. But then, we don't just document anyhow. We need to have a uniform way of doing that within our organization. We should not have department A using certain fonts and size, while another department is using another font and size. We'll also be talking about version control, document controls in general. After that, we move to the clause 8 that speaks to operation. And under that, we'll be looking at the operational planning and control of all the processes we have in place. Have they been planned? And we have controls in place to help us actually know when to do certain things, or how long it's going to take us to attain certain things. And under it, we'll be looking at the emergency preparedness and the response. There is no system that is perfect. Coming from the security environment, I do say there is nothing like 100% security. So also, there is nothing like 100% when it comes to our processes, that there will not be faults at any point in time. Once we develop our policies, our procedures, and people start to use it, there will be issues. So are we prepared for those emergencies? Have we identified those emergencies? And we have plans in place to address them. And also, we'll be looking at the clause 9 that speaks to performance evaluation. I'm taking my time to explain because when I get to them proper, I might not really, because of time constraint, I might not be able to do that in depth. Also, we'll be looking at the performance evaluation aspect. Remember, the other time when we talk about the characteristics, we spoke about continuously improving our processes. The question is, how do we continuously improve the process we have in place if there is no quantitative way of we knowing what actually our own result is at a particular time? If you say you want to continuously improve a particular process and you don't have quantitative insight into what it is or what it was that the result you got last time was maybe 80%, you just said, oh, I have a mentor back in school that used to say, if you tell me something is big, how big is the big? It is when I know the quantity of that certain team that will be able to know how to further increase it where the continuous improvement comes in. And under that, we'll also be looking at the internal audit, which is necessary to check. We've decided to adopt this framework to assist us to achieve environmental compliance. We have to check how is what we've implemented, how is it in accordance with the requirement of the framework 14001 that we are adopting. And that is where the audit aspect of things comes in. We have to talk about the management review. We've talked about management. They need to commit to it. And if they committed to it, we need to give them feedback. And how do they get to do that? It's through the management review. And we'll be looking at various things that we consider during the management review meeting. And the last clause, but not the least, which is clause 10, which speaks to improvement. Another that we have 3 subclauses also. Another we'll be looking at non-conformities and corrective actions. From our internal audit, what are the non-conformities that have been identified? And what are the planned corrective actions we plan to use to remediate those non-conformity? And also, we'll be looking at continuous improvement, which is we ensure that we mature along the way. So how does it standard in itself? How does it work? Don't worry about the numbering you are seeing on my screen. Actually, this belongs to the 20, the numbering is not for this present version, but don't worry about it. What I want you to focus on is the lettering. Now, we have various segments. The first one is saying, as an organization, what are the various environmental aspects? And how do we do that? Is by ensuring that we identify our environmental aspect that can create issues for us. We also talk about the legal requirements, because if you don't meet up with legal requirements, it can result in an issue for us as an organization. From there, we talk about what potential emergencies that will arise or that will occur as we proceed. And from there also, after that, we now look at it. How do we now manage these various issues that we, as an organization, we've already identified? From there, we talk about we setting a target, objective. We know from our environmental aspects that we've identified, we've known that there are certain issues that is attached to those environmental aspects. Let me even define our environmental aspect right from here. Environmental aspect is actually talking about those elements of your organization's activities, your organization's products and services that can interact with the environment, thereby causing potential impact on the environment. Once you've done that, you will now want to set a target. All right, we've identified one of our environmental aspects to be air emission. Then how do we ensure that as an organization, we reduce our air emission to a certain number? We set the target. Just like Volkswagen set a target of attaining certain environmental emission as, I think, 2030, if I'm right. So what do? Each time they release a new version of their vehicle, they need to take what we call quantitative measure of the emission from the car. But then if you go online, you see that at the point in time they were sanctioned because what did they do? They manipulate their value. From there, you move to about now training your employees to actually know what is expected of them to achieve your set objective, to also assist you to reduce those issues that might negatively impact your organization. You talk about operational controls. We also talk about responding to emergencies that might occur. From there, we talk about now, how do we now check the process we have in place? We do audits. we do monitoring, and we do what we call compliance evaluation, and also emergency drill. From there, we talk about continuous improvement. We fix issues and we improve along the way. So moving into the clauses proper, I'm going to take them one by one. The 4.1 that speaks to context of the organization. 4.1 says we need to understand our organization and its context. Which type of organization are you? You need to understand what it is you do within your organization, who it is you do it with, how do you do it, and with whom. From there, you go further, identify what are those various internal issues, external issues that might prevent you from actually achieving what we call compliance with environmental requirements, or from that will prevent you from attaining your obligation towards the environment. So we can see we have various internal issues here, which is the likes of maybe you don't have automation in place, you don't have enough workforce potential to control hazardous materials that is being released from your organization. We want to talk about the external issues. We'll be looking at the likes of your customers, issues concerning your customers, regulatory changes that occur constantly. We want to talk about your contractors and also community issues. From there, we also talk about relevant interested parties to your organization, the likes of government, regulatory body, our customers, and employees. So when you are considering to understand your organization, you must look internally, look externally to actually understand the context of your organization. Remember what you do, who you do it with, how you do it. 4.2 speaks to now understanding the needs and expectations of our interested parties. Those people that we do business with as an organization, what are they expecting from us? What do they need us to do? We need to also identify that. And please remember, everything we do should be documented as an evidence, because during an audit, that's what will be requested. They want to see. Understand their expectation or what they need from you. Check, am I still audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, thank you. And the 4.3 speaks to determining the scope of the management system. Already said it. We want to implement. We need to understand what is the extent that our implementation is going to cover, depending on the structure of our organization. Some organizations are so wide that they might decide to adopt the implementation to cover a specific department. Some might be the whole headquarters, while some might also want to include the branches. So we need to understand that. And also, when we are determining the scope of our implementation, we have to put into consideration from what we have already documented in 4.1, which is what are those internal and external issues that faces us as an organization. We also put into consideration what are the expectations from our interested parties. And with that, we'll be able to determine our scope so that we know that we will be able to understand everything that needs to be under the purview of our implementation and will not overlook everything or anything. And 4.4 that speaks to the management system in itself, saying that we as an organization, we need to establish, implement, and ensure that we continuously improve the management system that we have in place. And under it, we'll be talking about your policy in itself, talking about your environmental plan, because the standard says establish, implement, and continuously improve. So we'll be looking at the interaction of your process right from the start of your implementation till the outcome. Moving to clause 5 that speaks to leadership. And under clause 5, we talk about three subclauses. That is 5.1 speaks to leadership and its commitment. You will agree with me that no matter what we want to
What is the distance?
do in life, there is always somebody or some that are needed to spearhead. Sorry, is somebody speaking? Please, I will. Organization during implementation process or during carrying out any activities within the organization. Management should be the driving force. Let's forget about the budgeting aspect for now. Let's assume we are forgetting about it for now. When it comes to the actual effectiveness of those processes, if management is not involved, you see, we have the likes of maybe position contest. Somebody will say, you can't tell me to do something. I'm here before you. And my position is higher than yours. But then when there is leadership commitment, you know that the leadership has already empowered someone that, okay, for this particular project, you are to oversee it. So he can call on anybody within the organization. When it comes to your process, can you give me what you do on your process? What you do on process, can you let's come together, let's brainstorm, and let's see what are the issues you are facing. We talk about other things, resources. It requires the management's commitment to be able to provide all those things. Moving on to the 5.2 that speaks to environmental policy. Now, it is also the responsibility of the management in itself to develop that or to define that overreaching or generalized policy that shows the commitment of the organization towards environmental activities. Now, you agree with me that Nigeria has a policy. It was not developed by you and I, it was developed by the federal government. Nigeria, back in school, we all recite it. We all recite the pledge. That is, I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to blah, 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 blah. Apologies to those that are not Nigerians. I know you have your own pledge. Just using this to define and make you understand what environmental, the 5.2 actually is speaking to when we talk about overreaching policy. This is a policy that defines or tells us about the commitment of your organization. Now, that is why if you recite the Pledge of Nigeria, you see a lot of things that you're already committing to. So now we want to know, what is your environmental policy? And also from there also, you have to tell us, how do you also intend to continuously improve the environmental system? So top management must establish, implement, and maintain a defined policy. 5.3 speaking to organization rules, responsibility, and authority. We've said it. Somebody needs to spearhead it. Now, within the environmental management system, there are diverse roles that should be assigned. The likes of your lead implementer, your auditors, and the likes. People should be assigned diverse roles to ensure the effectiveness of the environmental management system. And aside that also, aside from the allocation of roles, you need to communicate those roles and responsibility to the necessary individuals and ensure that those roles has been acknowledged. Because if you send me an email of certain role and I didn't acknowledge it, I might not do anything in regards to that particular role. and maybe on the day of audit, evidence is being asked to be presented. I will tell you, I didn't know and I didn't acknowledge it. That is why it is necessary that once you appoint or allocate roles, that is being acknowledged by those persons. I will move to clause 6, which is planning. And under planning, we have the 6.1 that speaks to action to address risk and opportunity. Looking at what we've already defined or documented in our clause 4, those issues, the expectations of our interested parties, everything, look at it and look at the organization as a whole. What are the risks that is attached to those things? And what are the opportunities that is attached to it? So we also look at our legal obligations. We look at our environmental aspect also. What are those things that are attached to it? The risk. But first things first, when we're talking about risk, the first point of at any point, the first thing we need to do when it comes to risk is we need to do what we call planning. And how do we do planning? As an organization, we must have a risk methodology in place. Which standard are we? Which framework are we adopting? Are we adopting the 31,000 methodology? Are we adopting COSO? Are we adopting NIST? Anyone we are trying to adopt, we ensure that we have that. We also determine how are we going to define our likelihood, our impact. What is our risk appetite as an organization? What is our risk tolerance? And what is our risk capacity? All those things already defined, we analyze. Then we evaluate, we analyze, and then we propose certain control. Environmental said the other time that these are the elements or aspects of your organization's activities, process, act with the environment. And what are those aspects? Air emission. We talk about landfill as the impact of packaging. And that's the menace in the world we are today. Plastic does not deteriorate on time. So it becomes an issue. We have metal chips. The environmental impact is mineral depletion also. We have transportation, which also constitutes. That is why if you measure the quantity, wastewater, effluent discharge from your organization, it causes or results in what we call water pollution. That reminds me back when I was in undergraduate, my project was actually about quantifying what we call, there's a particular chemical that is used in the production of a plastic material. Quantifying it in effluent discharge to see that particular chemical, what is the quantity of it that is being retained or constitute in the effluent. When we talk about effluent, we're talking about those waters coming out of organization. And those waters, most of the time, a lot of this organization, they are always very next or not far from major rivers that people are using to do a lot of things where we fish and stuff like that. And this is an example of an environmental impact assessment where we have to identify the various activities and the aspects we are talking about. We are talking about, for instance, oil and water separators, talking about effluent from our pond for those people that are into aquaculture. And also from there, we talk about the risk itself that is associated with those environmental aspects. Then we go about determining what is the consequence. When we talk about consequence, we are talking about impacts. Talk about the likelihood. What is the probability of that aspect resulting in a risk? Then from there, we achieve our risk level, or we call it risk ranking, by saying consequence multiplied by likelihood, depending on how we've defined it in our methodology. All right. Also, this is a template that shows what we call risk matrix, showing us, okay, at what level should we classify certain risks as low? At what level should we classify it as medium? And at what level should we classify it as high? And you can see, just like I said the other time, it's always likelihood multiplied by impact. And you can see we've decided to use the range 1 to 4 for our likelihood, and then 1 to 4 also for our impact. And then you multiply impact and likelihood. We show you these metrics we have here. We call it risk metrics. So you can decide to say, depending on how you the value you use, maybe 1 to 3 to be low, 4 to so number to be medium, and then so forth and so forth. So significant aspects, we've already talked about the environmental aspect of things. Look at those processes, and we've mentioned it. Air emission, effluent discharge, packaging, those are various aspects depending on the organization you are. That is why 4.1 is actually important, saying understand the context of your organization. So from there, you look at the severity of that particular environmental aspect. You talk about the probability. What are the possible legal issues that might arise? And then what is as an organization, what is your own business objective towards ensuring that that environmental aspect of things, the impact is actually, the impact and the likelihood of its occurrence is actually drastically reduced. And I gave you the illustration of Volkswagen and some. We have a lot of countries these days that are trying to ensure that when it comes to organization within their geographical area, that they abide with certain amount of air emissions from their organization. And we talk about the environmental aspect of things, life cycle. So you have to look at your organization. We've been talking about it. First things first, please, important to know when you're talking about the environmental management system, environmental aspects of your organization. What are those things that your activities as an organization, your product as an organization, your service as an organization, what are those things that you give out of your organization that has the tendency to interact with the environment? And for those of us that are very acquainted, we talk about the 3 house, 4 house, depending. You reduce and you recycle and stuff like that. So look at this concept of life cycle thinking, saying that from consumption, you are trying to produce a particular material. You think about it, then you produce it. You get the materials necessary for that particular concept you've developed in your mind. You manufacture it. Time will not permit us. I will have walk us down the line of history when it comes to how plastic actually comes to be, but time will not permit us on that. You manufacture it. After you're done manufacturing it, you need to transport. Even right from the point of manufacturing, you're already constituting or producing an impact on the environment. Those materials, that's why I had to ask us the first question when we started. Those materials are being gotten from the environment. Then all the process you need to put in place. You had this chemical, you had that chemical, you have to ensure that you make use of this machine or the other. All these things constitute environmental issue. Then you have to transport it. Talk about the emission from those vehicles. Then it is being used at home. So after it is being used, we dispose it. Do we have a plan to ensure that those things can be recycled? Remember, we are talking about one of the aim of the environmental aspects or our environmental management system to ensure that what we reduce our waste. That is why when for those of us that are acquitted with the SDG 17 goals, you see, it aims at ensuring that we move from what we call linear consumption to what we call circular. Instead of from production to use and to dispose, we move from what production, use, dispose, recycle, or reuse, depending. Now I'm talking about our obligation as an organization. What is our responsibility to environmental aspect of things? We should not just be concerned about the profit aspect of things, because if we are not at the long run, it's actually still going to affect or impact our profit at the end of the day. If people complain about the cost of compliance, have you checked the cost of non-compliance? So what are your obligations? What is it expected of you as an organization to do? Are you expected to meet with certain quantity of effluent discharge before you can discharge those wastewater? I was speaking about my project back in school. Normally, there are laws that guides the quantity of chemical that should still be remain in your effluent before you discharge it to the environment. But the case is something else. No proper organization, no proper measurement to ensure that organization are actually in compliance with this. We move to 6.14 that speaks to planning actions. So we have to, as an organization, we have to ensure that everything we've put in place when it comes to how we are going to achieve our environmental obligations, when it comes to our objective, that everything's are being put in plan. And under the principles you're talking about, do you have an environmental policy? Have you identified the various risks and opportunities? Speaking to those things, what are those obligations? Have you identified them? Then, are you constantly monitoring those things? 6.21 and 6.22, speaking to our objective and its planning of actions. Now, there should be an objective. As for us as an organization, what is the target for a particular environmental aspect? Let's say air emission. What are we actually planning to meet at so time? Just like Volkswagen said, at so year, they want to meet this quantity of environmental emission when it comes to the combustion that is being released from their vehicles. So you have to ensure that you have an objective, you have objectives rather, that is in line with those environmental aspects of things from your organization. Then you have to plan on how to ensure that you achieve this objective. Please remember, your objective should always be smart, specific. Don't say, one day we are going to achieve is zero. I believe the world actually presently now, they are trying to, the world is working towards zero emission by 2050. Because climate change is a menace to us presently. So, its objective when it comes to environmental compliance, is it specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and is it time bound? So our time will not permit me. This is an example of we having an objective, the plan to achieve them. Who are those people that we are being in charge of ensuring that oversee or implement that particular objective? What are the resources that are needed? This is just a template for that. And 7.2 coming to clause 7 that speaks to support. So we talk about the resources. We've already trashed that or tackled that under clause 5. The management should ensure that the resources are necessary, are provided. Now 7.2 and 7.2 and 3 speaks to competence and awareness. Ensure that people within your organization are well trained. They are well knowledgeable when it comes to environmental aspect of things. And ensure that your lead implementers, your lead auditors, and every other process owners, we call them champions, has the necessary competence towards achieving your goal when it comes to environmental compliance. So this is a specific training link telling you the various departments and what are the various trainings that is required by those departments. 7.4, which under that speaks to communication, and it tells us that we need to communicate, ensure that both our objectives, our policies, and other things that are needed to be known by both our internal and external parties are being communicated. And clause 7.5 that speaks to documented information. As an organization, do you have a uniform way of documenting procedures, policies, records within our organization? And are these things being controlled? Do we control access to it? Do we have an established classification level within our organization to let us know those policies are those documents that are confidential, those that are restricted, those that are internal, and those that can be displayed or published publicly? And also, how do we go about version control? Do we have the appropriate understanding when it comes to versioning in our organization? Because I see a lot of organizations do this wrongly. You've reviewed any change to that document and it's moving from 1.0 to 2.0. Do you have a documented process on how things should be done? And we also have records that always evidence that is attached to those processes we are doing. 8.1 speaking to operational planning and control. All those things we say we are going to do, are they planned appropriately? Do we have controls in place to ensure or tell us how we are going to achieve those things? Another things under the clause 8 is talking about you ensure that you control change. Are your change planned? Every change should not be an emergency within our organization. Every change should not be something that we don't plan for. And also, when it comes to our source processes, because when we talk about environmental aspects of things, I said those are the activities of your organization that has a tendency to interact with the environment. So we can classify it into two, which is direct and indirect. Those are the ones that directly they are coming from your organization. What about the indirect aspect of things, which are your suppliers are constituting to the environment? So you ensure that there is a process in place to also achieve that. 8.2 speaks to emergency preparedness. So I already know that time will not permit me. That's why I've trashed them out when I was talking about the whole the slide that I presented that shows the whole clause aspect the other time. So emergency. Have we already identified those things that can result in emergencies? And do we have plans in place to ensure that we mitigate them? So you can call it emergency, you can call it incidents. Do we have the measures in place? Have we planned for them? So this is a template that shows different emergencies, their potential impacts, and also for this organization, the various policies, procedures that speaks or plans that speaks to those emergency and how they need to go about it. Clause 9 that speaks to monitoring and the 9.11 speaks to monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation in general. Do you have metrics in place to help you achieve what we call quantitative? Telling you that, oh, as at last year, this is the amount of chemicals in our effluent discharge. Is it 20%? Is it 30%? So that by next year, we will know if there is an improvement or if they deteriorated. We need to keep monitoring those processes to see if they are still in conformity, because sometimes changes might occur that change the status or the nature of those things. And also, we look at it, how compliance as part of our evaluation. We have what we also call under clause 9.1.2 that speaks to evaluating of your compliance. Those compliance obligations that you've identified as an organization, how compliant are you to them? So this is also a template that shows audited areas when it comes to what we call compliance obligation evaluation. So for this particular organization, it's not a Nigerian organization, so it is expected that companies, before anything, they collect what we call air quality permit. But for that type of obligation, it's not applicable to this particular organization. So they said it is not applicable to them because they do not emit enough to go ahead and say they want to collect air quality permit. For ozone depletions, for water waste that's been discharged into the sewers, and for hazardous management of waste management for the organization. So these are various obligations that is expected of them to abide with, and they also need to check and evaluate it. How well are they abiding or complying with this? So moving on to the internal audits, clause 9.2 and 9.21 and 9.22 that speaks to internal audit. Are you doing what you said you are doing? And have you documented what you said you are doing? So ensure that all these things, your policies or procedures, are actually being followed effectively. And also, you have to ensure that there are plans on how often you want to achieve or go about auditing of your processes. And also, you have to also ensure that there are plans in place on how long it's going to last. Those audits. 9.3 that speaks to management review. You have to give feedback to management from the point when you started implementation.
Sorry, excuse me, sir.
All right.
I'm just trying to remind you that we should try and wrap up because of time.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
When it comes to the management review, from the point when you started implementation, see, maybe it's been 3 months, 2 months, there have been changes that have occurred in the organization to the likes of your internal and external issues, to the expectations from your interested parties. So all these things, and also those opportunities, those risks that has been identified, didn't need to be communicated to the management. Clause 10 speaking to improvement. So under that, we talk about the non-conformities you've identified or that you are given, yes, that you are given during internal audit. So you ensure that you put measures in place to correct them. And also continuous improvement. And ensure that you identify various aspects that you can do better. Like someone was telling me recently, whatever it is you are doing presently, is it competence? There are better ways to do it. There are better things you can adopt to ensure that you improve the quality of the awareness you are doing within your organization. So identify those areas of improvement and keep doing them. So how do we go about implementing the standard? So we need to plan. And first things first, we need to obtain management's commitment. How long is it going to take? we put the timeline. And who is responsible? Determining or defining the context of the scope of the implementation. Is it like, are we applying it to certain departments, the entire organization? We need to also put those in place. Monitoring. What are the different KPIs we want to use for monitoring? And how often do we want to do monitoring? What about conducting trainings to ensure the competence of our employees when it comes to environmental aspect of this, and also review and improvement, which is also necessary. So thank you for staying with me. We've come to the end of the management environmental management system training section. Thank you for listening. So if you have any question, I believe you can ask. And over to you, Mercy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause to our trainer. Please, let's keep our appreciation coming. Thank you so much, Ini. I appreciate your delivery. It was insightful. Thank you so, so much. All right, I think we've eaten into our break. So the break is really going to be a very short one. So please just go stretch, have a little stretch of leg, take a cup of water, take snacks, and then we'll be back at exactly 12 p.m. All right, you should be here before 12, of course. So we will just start at 12 on the dot. All right. Thank you so much for sticking by and enjoy your short break. Thank you, Nyolu.